Well, a rescue mission is finally underway for up to 10,000 asylum seekers stranded and starving at sea after being abandoned by people smugglers. After initially turning the boats away, Indonesia and Malaysia have agreed to take in some of the refugees fleeing persecution in Myanmar, urging Australia to do the same. But Prime Minister Tony Abbott wasn't swayed.
This is quite properly a regional responsibility, and the countries that will have to take the bulk of the responsibility are obviously the countries which are closest to the problem.
Well, over the past couple of weeks, a series of mass graves have been discovered at abandoned people smuggling camps on the Thai-Malaysian border. Most of the victims are believed to be Rohingya Muslims, one of the most persecuted ethnic groups in the world. Australia has sent $6 million in emergency aid to Myanmar, and a delegation from Canberra will attend a crisis summit in Bangkok tomorrow. Lateline's Jenny Stein looks at how Australia's immigration policies are being viewed in the region as the latest crisis unfolds.
Evidence of the trade in human misery laid bare. For years, the dense forests of southern Thailand and northern Malaysia have been a staging post for smugglers. At the hand of human traffickers, many desperate customers became captives, with fatal consequences.
The forensics have now finished excavating the first site and have found one human body so far.
The victims buried here, believed to be Muslim Rohingya from Myanmar, fled persecution, seeking freedom. They found death.
We have discovered 139, which we believe to be graves. Yeah? We don't know what are underneath.
They are discriminated against on a terrible, terrible scale in Myanmar. There have been pogroms in Rakhine. It's one of Myanmar's poorest states. And there's a sort of history of discrimination.
The Rohingya first settled in Myanmar after crossing over from neighbouring Bangladesh centuries ago. In 2012, they were targeted by violent Buddhist mobs who forced more than 140,000 from their homes into squalid camps. Despite living in Myanmar for generations, the tag illegal migrant still hangs over their heads. They're denied citizenship and access to education and the right to travel.
The Rohingya have been in that part of Myanmar, Rakhine, the southwestern corner of Myanmar for a very, very long time. I mean, you think Australia's white Australians have been here for 200 years. They've probably been in Myanmar longer than that.
While scores of boats set off at the start of this sailing season, so far only a few have made it to shore. How many are still out there on the Andaman Sea, no one knows.
We think probably 6,000 or 7,000 people. They're 200 or 300 to a boat, so that could be up to 50 boats. But the truth is no one knows. No one has been able to actually do the search and survey operations that are necessary to get a real grip on the scale of this disaster.
Former Ambassador John McCarthy is critical of the Australian government's response to this crisis and its labelling of those fleeing as economic migrants.
Well, we're on very shaky moral ground, quite obviously, given the approach we've taken. I don't think anybody can be in any doubt about that.
That's a view shared by Thailand's former Foreign Minister, Kasit Paramya.
I am quite disappointed with I think the Australian government at the moment. I think at the time of Whitlam and Hawke and so on, you were very internationalist. You were pro-Asia Pacific, you were pro-human rights and so on. But lately, Australian government have become more parochial, xenophobic, nationalistic and so on.
John McCarthy argues Australia needs not just to contribute to humanitarian support, but to increase the number of refugees it accepts.
This has been argued in the past by utterly reputable people, not cafe society. People like Angus Houston and a committee that was established 2 years ago, that we should increase our intake to 20,000 and then to 27,000. If we want, as Australians, to look other nations in the face and seek to claim that we are people of good repute, we have to do that.
Kasit Paramya says Australia and Thailand have history on working together to resolve regional refugee crises. And that is what talks in Bangkok tomorrow should be seeking to achieve.
the international community was able to solve the Vietnamese boat people successfully. So that experiences with the Vietnamese boat people could be, I think, transferred or translated into action to solve the Rohingyas, both people of today.
When almost 1 million Vietnamese refugees fled their country by sea in the 70s and 80s, Thailand committed to following Australia's lead.
When we were receiving the Vietnamese boat people, Australian government at that time was telling the Thai government the principle of non-refoulement, a French word for not to push back. So today, I think Australia also must work hand in hand with the countries in the Asia Pacific region to find a common solution to the Rohingyas problem.
Decades later, the region appears to be once more following Australia's example. But language and actions have changed.
According to Thai law, they are all illegal migrants who illegally entered Thailand.
There is no reason and there is no moral, reasoning for anyone to push back people who have been suppressed, has been, I think, strangers in their own country. They have come for help, I think, for a betterment of life, and I think Australia or Thailand, Malaysia should have understood that.
How do you go from a position of nope, nope, nope to turning around and saying, yes, we will take people who are fleeing these camps?
By having political courage. This is not something that has been in enormous supply in this country in recent years. But if a country, a government, is persuaded that the arguments are correct ones for changing policy, it should do so, and it should demonstrate leadership to the Australian people by explaining why it should do so.
Efforts to find the thousands of people still believed drifting at sea has now finally begun.
Our mission will concentrate on the sea that connects Thailand and Myanmar, as well as the exclusive economic zone about 20 to 30 nautical miles west of the Similan Islands.
While Thailand has been slow to respond, it is making a singular effort, dispatching ships and aircraft in a real race against time.
Well, a good outcome is stopping people dying in the Andaman Sea. Is the immediate good outcome.
So that is go out and find them?
Go out, find them, and find places that they can be fed and watered, because they're dying on these boats, and that needs to stop. A long-term solution has to be Myanmar. It has to be a new modus vivendi between the races in southwest Myanmar.